What's up? It's your girl Onyx Isis, and I'm here doing another book review. So, every book review that I'm doing, however often I do them, will be from the perspective of African internationalism, a theory which I subscribe to, a theory that was developed by the chairman of my movement, Uhuru movement, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who's been a lifelong revolutionary. And African internationalism centers the lives of African people at the center of it, explains how capitalism came to be at the cost of our freedom and our resources and our continent, and how that if we want to ever be free, not oppressed, that we have to organize ourselves in order to overturn capitalism, get our resources back, and get our continent back. If you want to learn more about African internationalism, you can go to apspuhuru.org to find out more and read the entire description of the theory. So I'm reviewing today Black Skin, White Mask by Frantz Fanon. And Frantz Fanon was a revolutionary that participated in the Algerian Liberation Front that worked to end French colonialism in Algeria. In this book, and he wrote Wretched of the Earth, of which I'm a big fan of, and really became a Fanon fan after reading that because it really blew me away and helped me understand further like the whole question of colonialism and how its impact on black people, and even draw correlations to how colonialism keeps us in a state of sameness, despite having decades and centuries even between us. So when I was opening the book to read Black Skin, White Mask, I really expected that same sort of analysis to be applied to how black people experience their blackness under whiteness, right? So this was Fanon's first book, I believe, and so the same sort of analysis that was given in Wretched of the Earth is not here. In fact, it's very where I find Wretched of the Earth to be really objective. I find this book to be really subjective, even though it's using science in terms of psychology and psychoanalysis to explain why people behave the way they do. One of the most bizarre things I found in this book is I guess, the um, that justification that black men want to take the place of white men. Black men should do everything possible to minimize the fear that white women have of them so that they can be in a relationship. That's what I got from it. Um, and so even as we're looking at the second chapter, which talks about black women in our relationship to white men, I was totally like on board with that. Like I was looking at this, and at the time, when I was reading this, Meghan Markle was marrying into the British royal family, into this horrible imperialist family that have colonized the world, dominated the world, killed millions of our people through bloodthirsty conquest, and oppressed and enslaved half of the entire world. That people were celebrating that whole process with the Meghan Markle, and I was just like, I can't even. I can't even. And I was drawing correlation with what he was saying in the chapter describing black women and our relationship to white men. And I was just like, yes, this is exactly what's happening. This is exactly what's happening, particularly as it related to the British royal family. So when we got to the other chapters that dove deeper into the black man and how the black man experiences life, especially as it relates to the relationship to white women, and I just saw that all of these justifications, subjective justifications for why black men would want to be in a relationship or want to help minimize the fear that white women have of them, I was really floored because while I felt at the first the chapter on African women was really more objective and removed. What I'm understanding after reading the other chapters is that it's not objective. It's really subjective, and it's based on it was a complete disdain for black women who would actually choose white men, and it was a heavy and deep critique. And he even provided like justification, like white women want to take the place of black women want to take the place of white men, and that black women would never date black men, particularly those from the French colonies, of which he was a French colony. He was a subject of the French colony as an African. So he went to France, and some of this relationship stuff is based on French colonialism. Um, but then, then it goes shifts to black men, and that was more like, let's our job is to help white people understand that we're not a threat. And then some of the other chapters, then after we get out of that relationship, black men relationship to white women, um, he talking about the psychoanalytical part about why black men feel this way, why there's a built up aggression, and how aggression comes out in the world of blackness. And I found that there was some interesting stuff in there that I could agree with. For example, like, we don't because we aren't able to fight for our freedom in the way that will ensure our freedom back then. Most of our aggressiveness is revealed through sports context. That's why we love football, love to see Africans on the field. That's why we love to see, MMA matches, and how these people are fighting back and forth, and how if you're a black man pitted against a white man in the ring, doesn't matter, like, everybody's rooting for this black man to win, because this is a miniature representation of our desire to get freedom and our desire to beat the white man at his game. And so I can understand that part of the book. But overall, even as we talk about the psychoanalysis part that he's talking about in terms of black men, it all continues to be, even if you think he's trailing off on another subject to to deepen that whole understanding that we have of our own colonialism and colonization, it still drifts back to this same theme of trying to minimize how white women see black men, and also how black men are trying to be like white men, take their place, and the fear that white men even have of black men in terms of black malehood representing a genetic annihilation of whiteness. Whereas that's not the same case, for black women, essentially. So black men have this genetic time bomb waiting to happen. They are more of a threat to the white world than black women would be. And so even in that explanation goes into, like, this whole justification of the fear, but also that they shouldn't be afraid of that, because we don't have power and things like that. So it was a really interesting read. To be honest, after I read this book, I really want to throw the whole Fanon away. If I had not read Wretched of the Earth first, and I had read this book first, I would have just not have read anything from Fanon, honestly, because I was really disgusted wholly by this book and some of the justifications that were used in it. But I recognize that people have had a chance to grow and develop and develop themselves politically, and he did, and it's shown in Wretched of the Earth. I'm still a fan of Fanon. I'm still a fan of Wretched of the Earth, and particularly that chapter in Wretched of the Earth called On Violence. I would recommend that if you are interested in justifying my review of this book, you should review this book. You should read this book and try to figure out if what I'm saying is true. Some people do like the book and feel like it represents them. I just found, as a black woman reading this book, that it was really odd and bizarre, and as an African internationalist, I found it even more bizarre because, I read this whole colonial piece from him. But that's my review of Wretched of the Black Skin, White Mask. I hope you enjoyed it. Read on.